Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzor-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lost Signals Reviews TV and Film. I am Chris Morgan, here with Scott Thurlow.
I do not want to live with either of my parents.
Jonathan Ian Manzer.
More like divorce story, am I right?
And Stephen Armosi.
I'm divorcing all of you.
And today we are reviewing the Noah Baumbach. Oh my God, Baumbach. New film. Gotta fuck that one up.
Noah Baumbach
called
sounds like
Marriage
a Sesame
Story.
Street character.
That's now on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott, would you like to give us a log line?
Yeah, it's fairly simple. So I've gone with this is the story of Ad Drive and ScarJo getting devoed.
Very nice. And Ian, would you like to fill us in with the plot, please?
Charlie, a New York director of theater, and his...
Very much so. Theater.
Yes, and Nicole, his soon-to-be ex-wife, who is an actress with higher aspirations, go through a divorce. It starts mildly amicable. She goes out to the West Coast, he's on the East Coast, and then lawyers get involved, and it all goes to hell.
As happens.
Mm-hmm. And that's the...
And then they get divorced. Spoiler.
Yes. Yeah, so, I mean, the marriage is maybe 1/10 of the film, and then the separation, a separation, happens for quite a while. And it's a fairly dramatic film about a marriage falling apart, and also the evils of divorce lawyers.
Divorce attorneys.
Yeah. So, here's the... Not to pull a Chris, but to pull a Chris.
Are you going to bring up Star Trek?
No.
I should hope so.
I've seen two works recently that have cast a shadow over this, because I think this is a really well done film, but we saw a separation this year, which I think was one of the best films I've ever seen, and handled the separation and divorce, I feel, a much... I wouldn't say better, but like dramatically and impactfully.
Granted, higher stakes, I would say, for sure, in that one. But
Sure.
And even though, they're both middle-class kind of families going through, but I don't know, it was the Iranian flavor versus the American lawyer and legal side of it that really brought this one, made this one interesting, but a little bit shallower, I suppose. But I also rewatching The Sopranos, and the fight scenes between Carmela and Anthony Soprano at the like towards the end of that show are, I think, much better than this. And this is the problem: is I think this was really well done, except that
not for the fact that you happen to see
recently
those
seen
things,
these in my mind, and I think that they're better. But overall, like, it's a very well acted, very dramatic movie about the end of love.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna still like I thought that to myself too. About half an hour into the film, I'm like, my jokey thing was, I liked this movie a lot better the first time I saw it when it was called Separation. Like I just couldn't help it. You're right. Like, now I do agree that Marriage Story itself is a well done film. I think the portrayals and the unfolding, the dissolution of their marriage and feelings for each other was well done. Now maybe those things don't cast as much of a shadow for me, but yes, it's certainly like something I almost couldn't help just because of that fact. So even given all that, I think it's damn solid. I'm looking at a very solid 2 score-wise. There are a couple of points I thought like could be maybe tightened up just a little, like kind of a nitpick, but still a very strong 2. I guess I wouldn't be opposed if anyone argues for a 3, but that's where I stand. So with that, what do you guys think?
I kind of agree with that. I think I'm going to go with a 2 on this one. I thought that it was a movie that... this is probably slightly my bias as well. Like, we did see A Separation recently, and that was a really well-done movie, but it was to a large degree, like, darker than this movie.
Mhm.
I feel like there was a lot more, like, hanging over that couple in terms of
that's
the society they were
That's well
trying to
said.
get divorced, and there's a lot more to be said about, like, that society. Like, divorce in America is fairly common, so this is, like, a story about a common thing that happens a lot. That was a story about something that
an extraordinary
they
event.
really
Yeah.
had to fight to actually try and do. Anyway, this is not a review of that movie. So, but I thought that in terms of the plot of this one, it was good, but it wasn't my type of movie, right? Like, I thought it was a really well done movie that I normally wouldn't be interested in. The only reason that I am interested in it is because we have to do all of the Best Picture
Hopefully
movies.
it's an Oscar pick, right?
And it seems like it's pretty high up there in the rankings for those. But B, because it actually is a very highly regarded already movie, and it's in the landscape. And for what it was really well done. But it wouldn't be my first pick of like a type of movie that I would go out and search out.
I feel you.
That being said, I thought that it hit its beats pretty well. There were a couple of points where I thought it could have not exactly dropped scenes, but like dropped little parts of scenes that were
exactly. That's how I feel as well.
Like whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm at a 2 right now. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Not to pull an Ian, pulling a me.
But
Go on.
No. I was thinking about it when you were talking about a separation because Noah Baumbach's first film, Squid and the Whale, was another story of divorce. And like a separation, it was Jesse Eisenberg. I think it was his first breakout role. And with both separation and this, you did see the parents, but you also had a teenage child in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. So you had somebody in the middle of it who was more cognizant of the world as opposed to Henry,
who's like 8 or 9 or something like that.
Smaller.
This one,
So you really were caught as a child of divorce. The Squid and the Whale traumatized me, and I remember seeing a separation. The nuances of both films, there were like so many subtle things that I cannot tell you what they were, but I felt them when I watched them. Mm-hmm. And this way, to a certain degree. But I felt like in a weird way, because this is a very good movie, and it is much better than some shit that I look back on, like Kramer versus Kramer, which is bullshit now. No, seriously, when you see a film like this, but this film seems it doesn't seem as...
doesn't quite reach those heights.
Honest, because both of these, I mean, I'm not saying that because I know he based upon, his divorce, and I know he's a child of divorce too, but it just seemed that there were parts of this film, and we're going to get to it. I'll get to it when we get to style and we're talking about the protagonists and supportings. But I felt that there was this did traumatize me this morning. Really, it took me a while to, I got a lot of guitar playing done while I was watching this. But I agree with you on the 2. I was, it's going to be a strong 2, but I felt that there were certain things that were not. I don't know. It kind of, in some ways, it felt a little more Hollywood than.
I think that's what it is. Yes,
that's a good call.
Yeah,
I'm going to skip to style for a moment.
Good. Okay.
That I felt that, fittingly to the characters, this felt a little bit more stage play versus a separation, which felt almost like a voyeuristic documentary.
Yeah,
well said as well. Yeah, true.
And I think that when I'm looking at it, I haven't seen The Whale and the Squid or whatever.
Squid and Whale.
Yeah. Wherein a separation was, yes, they had their society which they were battling, but it was really about the flaws of them as humans, which this had a strict antagonist of the lawyers making things worse. So, and maybe that in the sense that it's a little bit more Americanized, a little bit more Hollywood, because there's
that angle involved.
Fuel thrown on the fire of their divorce, which a separation is just a unfiltered look at the failures of this relationship.
And that nails it right on the head, because in both A Separation and Squid and the Whale, any legal issues or anything are on the periphery. Because in both of those, you don't really see anything outside the core family, so to speak.
Good, people.
No, I'm good with that.
No.
Yeah, so that's 2s all around for that.
Yeah, I'm on all those. I think you guys are right. The last points you made, I think maybe like articulated what I was feeling. Yes, very strong too, just not quite. And ironically, I'm trying to separate this film from Separation, but it is difficult just because of the very fact of the,
You can't divorce
the recency effect, right? But I'm still sticking very strong too. It was a very well done plot overall for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And Ian, want to give us? Oh, sorry, Steve. Want to give us themes?
Yeah. So there is a lot here about obviously kind of people drifting apart. I think they did that portion of it really well, showing how these people, Nicole and Charlie, Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, were to a large degree different people than when they met each other, but also the same. And it really nailed home, like right in the beginning. It nailed that home when they read their
positive
when they
things,
when the narration read their letters to each other about what they loved about each other, and then when Scarlett Johansson's character refuses to read it in
counseling,
I thought that was a really good device to use to kind of get into the story, and then when Adam Driver gets to read it at the end, there's that kind of feeling of catharsis, and like the closing of that book, and there's a lot of like interesting stuff in here about kind of, you don't really like, what I kind of like about this is you don't outwardly see how this affects the kid. You kind of get little glimpses of it, and like they're like, there's a point where they're almost using him against each other, even if it's subconsciously, and then there's the point where they both realize that they kind of need to keep him out of it, and like they kind of go back and forth on that type of thing, which I really like, and the point where she says like, oh, he's going through a mommy phase right now, as they're going through the divorce, because he keeps telling Charlie, Adam Driver's character, to like go out of the room or whatever, because his mom will like sleep in the bed with him, and Charlie doesn't like that. I think there's like these little like subtle things that they keep on doing to like bring in how the kid is feeling throughout all this, without like being like, oh, he's really acting up or anything like that. Like there's never any of that. He acts up like a little bit a couple times, and annoys his dad, which is like the normal kid
even
acting up and annoying your dad type of stuff. It's nothing like out of the ordinary or anything like that. I'm glad they didn't go over the top with any of that stuff. But it does show like kind of how he's reacting to everything, without making it smash you in the face obvious. And there's also the I feel like Noah Baumbach got really fucked by some lawyers, because he is really clearly like hating on the lawyers in this one. And I mean, I get it. Like it's I love that they show the lawyers, all of them, all three of them, that eventually end up getting involved, as like, when they're on, they're like really fighting for their client, and the moment that they're like taking a break, they're like all fucking,
they're friends outside of.
They're all like, oh, this is all fucking normal that I'm like fucking you, like I'm completely screwing you, and then like I'm like, oh, I loved your play, like I really thought you got inside the head of this character or whatever. Like that shit was like a really good.
Nice little touch there to
like,
throw in.
It was a really good like take on the legal ramifications of something like this. So I'll leave it off there and let you guys discuss.
Well, I want to build off what you just said there, because I think that it really is a discussion. Because even though he does paint both Nicole and Charlie as flawed individuals, it's sympathetic to both of them. But it's very unsympathetic to the lawyers here. So it's really going out of its way to not only paint how the system is bad, but also by having Alan Alda's character being generally a good guy and sympathetic to everyone, and trying to be the caution pragmatism and actually talking with the other side, and to show like that kind of character can't survive in the cutthroat world of where you have the A-type personalities who have ideologies, trying to win for their client, regardless of the damage it does.
Right.
And he needs to get Ray Liotta's character in there, who's a shark himself, in order to
He's gonna fight
even
fire with
survive,
fire, essentially. Yeah.
And that the system itself is flawed. And even though, you just like, they're decent people, they're nice enough people, but they're creatures of a flawed system. And I think that was really a strong point he was trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to all that. I think that will flow into antagonists in a second, as one of you mentioned earlier as well. So yeah, certainly like the legal angle, like the stress it adds to like like the normal stress you already have going through divorce and the process of it, and like you might have to pay for your wife's lawyer as well, like all this stuff, and like you just get like blindsided by it. But certainly, again, the main thematic thrust, as you mentioned first, Steve-O, is like the dissolution and dissolvement of their relationship, and how that unfolds and how it affects them, each other, themselves personally, and of course their kid Henry. And you're right, like I do like the fact that maybe that's a bit of style, but it's not overly done, like how in terms of showing what's happening to him, but they still show you like here and there, right? So I think it's nicely balanced, and yeah, I think it does handle its obvious thematic elements really well for the most part, and ties into the performances and to the action. And yeah, I think we'll all speak. I certainly have more to say about it about the lawyer angle specifically in a second, but still, it is certainly as well woven into themes, and I'm probably going to give themes a pretty damn strong 1.
About Alan Alda's character, about him being the most idealistic of the lawyers,
Right.
Sure.
if not truthful, because the other two know that they're pieces of shit and that's what they do. And it just occurred to me while we're talking about this, it's like, wow, courtroom dramas, that's kind of redundant, because courtrooms are, because it is all a performance. But I liked how he was on his 4th marriage.
Yeah.
It's just like, and
That's right, I forgot they
he
mentioned that.
wasn't part of he didn't have the cutthroat that the other two,
mentality,
but he was on his 4th marriage, and they didn't really make mention of the other two. I'm going to give themes 1. I'm going to move on to the antagonist, because I feel like we're all going to the same way with antagonists. And really, it's really funny, because listening to you guys talking, thinking about this, and remembering movie more now, is that this really is the parent story as opposed to the kid story, which is what maybe the separation in Squid and the Whale was. But by the same token, it's one thing that I think that all 3 films do really well, this one being the 3 of them, is that they show that they give the best intentions and the worst behavior of both parents. They don't really, like, my father's a piece of shit. But my mom, there were some things, like when I see this, stuff like this, I know mistakes my mom may have made during a divorce. But a lot of stuff getting back, I'm just setting the stage for this, because now we're talking about the antagonist, which is the legal part of it. My parents' marriage counselor, Spinny, was setting up my dad on dates while they're in marriage counseling. And while my mom's lawyer was good and honest, my father's lawyer was naturally a piece of shit.
He was Ray Liotta.
No, he wasn't Ray Liotta. He was more like my father, associate.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, I was having a hard time digesting this film this morning. I really was. It was very difficult for me to watch this film, and I'm listening to you guys talk about the lawyers, and I'm finding myself getting angry. And I'm realizing,
I think the film wants you to feel that.
Well, it should, because I remember what these son of a bitches did to my mom. How my mom totally got screwed over in this divorce because of the legal system. So I'm going to give credit to all the lawyers here. At least they knew. At least they were honest. I'm going to give them credit. I'm going to give them that much credit, because they knew they were pieces of shit, and they knew it was all a performance. And even Alan Alda, who is the most sincere, but again, on his 4th divorce,
ineffective.
Couldn't handle, rise to occasion.
At least there was that much honesty. Whereas, like with my parents' divorce, and I'm giving you a lot of background information because it's hard for me to separate the antagonist from this.
Yeah.
But my mom's lawyer was much more like Alan Alda's, except much more competent. Only had been married once, had a kid, was actually a decent guy, but was much more like Alan Alda.
Sure.
But I know what merit, but it's just like with healthcare, anything like this. Why is this a business? Marriage is a business. Marriage counselors and divorce lawyers and so forth. This is a fucking business, and we're talking about people's lives. And there's a lot of self-serving elements to it. And it's like, if you're watching this, there's this whole strategy about, well, you have to have residence here because you said this there. And legally now, it's just like all this legal bullshit. And like from state to state in California, I forget what separated that from, shit. It's not important. The important thing is, the lawyers, but I'm going to say the fucking law is the antagonist because the system is, the system's really fucked up. And I think what was great, because when I first saw Laura Dern's character, I was like, oh my God, she's a caricature. But what I think he was doing with this, and this is why I'm going to give this a very strong one, is that he really was pulling out the law. He was pulling out the lawyers. He was exaggerating them and then kind of pulling them back in a way, making them self-aware because when he made them self-aware, like that they were pieces of shit. And when they're like, okay, we're going to take a break now and order lunch, everybody switched.
You obviously know no lawyers because every lawyer I know is exactly those characters. they're not exaggerating.
They're not playing anything.
They're real.
No, Sebastian's a lawyer, but he's doing good work. He's doing the.
All right.
But my whole point is, he did a really good job of exaggerating the antagonist without making him a complete caricature. Like they're very self-aware. I'm going to give him 1. Obviously, because I'm now having PTS, he obviously did a good job with these characters. So
how many PTS of your PTS?
Sure. But yes, but not like, I mean, I agree that, and this was sort of also flows in because of the choice to make the legal system, if you will, of going through a divorce and then as characters unto themselves, like Ray Liotta, and my joke was Lawyer Dern and Law Oda, so I'm just going to say that and then move on. But anyways.
So bad.
I know. That's why I had to say it. Regardless though, but having them be like the face of...
That is pretty fucking great.
What has become of you?
I thought it was clever. But anyways, yes. So, and I think we'll speak more about them as in secondary, coming up as well. But certainly I think in this instance, and if you guys recall, in terms of the plot of the film, early on, Charlie and Nicole decided they weren't going to use lawyers. And then sort of Nicole gets kind of like, not convinced, like, it's like, this is what you have to do. We have to do it eventually. And there are a couple of small, subtle things, like, for example, when Charlie realized he has to get a lawyer to figure it out, and he goes to meet with one and is told he can't because his ex-wife now has already met with one. That's like, and since she's disclosed that he's disbarred from representing Charlie, and she offhandedly mentions, oh, my sister made me go to like 11 lawyers.
Yeah.
And when he goes to that office, the receptionist says, it's a common thing. This happens a lot. Like she probably did it on purpose so you couldn't get a good lawyer. But that really wasn't the case. So it all just sort of folds into each other. And like, yeah, the absurdity of that system. Now he's forced to like choose from whatever scraps are left of lawyers she didn't see. So yeah, I do think like the system, as represented by those two characters and Aldo as well to an extent, is the antagonistic force, and that certainly was a purposeful choice on Noah's part to have that be part of the film. And yeah, I think it was very effective, and like I said, more to come in secondary, but I'm giving it a 1.
I don't have much more to say.
Yeah,
you guys
have covered a lot, yeah.
You guys have covered quite a bit on antagonists. I think that I'm going to give it a 1 as well. I think that I think you're right. The lawyers are kind of the antagonistic force, and the law to a large extent as well, as you mentioned, Chris. The antagonistic force in this movie. Honestly, it feels so much like they're trying to just get past this hurdle, and yeah, like the lawyers jump in and they're like, "Whoa, slow down, Bucko. Yeah. We gotta really drag.
You gotta hammer this shit out." One. Yeah,
and like that's kind of what happens, and I'm sure that's kind of what he was drawing on, what Noah Baumbach was drawing on when he wrote this script was like, yeah, this is like they slow you down. They don't want you to get through it. They want you to get what helps them, basically. And it seems like that's the case in this. So I'm going to give the antagonist a 1 because they are antagonistic AF.
As the one with the most experience in the legal system, I always say that I agree with the representation of lawyers It's all very Kafkaesque.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
I just got one thing to say because that is
One thing.
One more thing.
One more thing on this that I'm going to say is that with the whole let's do this without lawyers and the whole thing to your thing. When my parents got separated, my dad, who was a lawyer, the idea was, let's try to do this without lawyers. The first thing my mom did was go to her lawyer, who is one of the best lawyers and a really good guy, right away, because of that. Because if my father met with anybody else for that reason, so I'm props to my mom, props to Marilyn Morgan for
rock on, Marilyn.
Rock on,
go Chris's mom,
go mom. So
but yeah.
Go on.
Just one more thing. I just thought of this. The lawyer's even lampshade. He says to Charlie, right, Leona goes, by the time this is over, you're going to hate me and my partner by default because of what's happening, what's about to unfold.
Also, I love when he's like, you pay me $900 an hour. You pay him $450 an hour. Yeah. If you have some bullshit,
stupid
go to
questions,
him.
go to whatever his name was. Go to Fred.
Anyway.
Yeah, one though for antagonist, I think all around very strong.
And Scott, would you like to let us know about the protagonists?
Certainly. Yes. Like I said, Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, I think they're up for a number of nominations, like recognized, and I think rightly so. I think they did a very good job portraying a youngish couple, I believe like in their low, mid-30s. They've been married for 10 years, I believe the plot said. And yeah, they were very good. I think they played off against each other very well. I believe the relationship well enough. Like, yes, maybe the Hollywoodized thing, like, as you said, now that when you mentioned that sort of comes back to sort of bite me to analyze this question. But for the most part, I did buy into their relationship as, ex-lovers, and that married couple with a kid falling apart, going through this process, dealing with the lawyers, like, trying to figure it all out and getting just, again, so many things dumped upon them that they never thought they had to consider. And there's a nice scene at the end, or not nice, but a very impactful scene where they're arguing each other and just say like some nasty, hurtful shit, and then sort of like break down in front of each other as well. So yeah, overall, I think they were very well rounded. They certainly showed their flaws. They certainly showed their best parts. I think you said, Steve-O, it was very nice, sort of bookended the opening narration about the letters that they wrote about each other, and you can see like why they fell in love, but then as more details unfold, you realize like, yeah, the relationship kind of probably wouldn't have worked, and it sort of was doomed from the start, but they went along with it anyways, and now it's finally like unraveling. So yes, all of that to say, I'm going to give them both protagonist duties. I think they are the clear protagonist, and a very solid to strong one.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that both characters do a really good job as the protagonists. I don't think that anybody's going to argue that they're not the protagonists in this case. I think that they both turn out really strong acting performances, and it's really interesting seeing these two types of characters play off of each other, because neither one of them really wants to hurt the other one, but at certain points they do. And when you see that like human nature, like pettiness come out in them, it feels earned in this movie. It feels like that is what
not forced
their character would be doing at that point. And I think that this film does a really good job of getting you there, like showing you what they really. I really like what the beginning of this movie, where they show you what they really like about each other, so that when you get to the point where they fucking absolutely hate each other in that argument scene, and they break down and like, they both say some really hurtful stuff to each other, and then Adam Driver apologizes, and she like comforts him because he does really fucking step out of line at the end. Just says that he wishes she was dead. Like,
I say that to people all the time. It's not something wrong.
But yeah, getting
divorced. You got a fatal disease and then got hit by a car.
Yeah. It was pretty harsh, man. Like,
but like that whole scene was well done, and like kind of the whole movie leads up to that. And then like when he breaks down, it's kind of like that release of tension, and it's kind of like the restart to like build up at least an amicable relationship between the two of them again. I think that's well done, and done well by both of those actors. So I'm gonna give it a 1.
So there's an element of melodrama to any of these type of stories, and the problem again, as I go back to, is I'm not going to take credit away from them. I've seen it done better recently. Especially Whitecaps, the episode by The Sopranos. I showed Scott that.
He did show me a scene.
Yeah, all the strippers you fucked, all the cocktail waitresses were your best friends with all of them as well. Like it just, I guess because I spent so much more time with those characters, it hits home more. Yeah. But this one, like, yeah, like it worked. It was a rising tension throughout their fight, and it worked, but it didn't work as well as other things. But I'm not gonna.
It wasn't as strong compared to things you've seen recently. I'm just
going to say that, like, yeah, they did a fine job.
I agree with Steve-O. You said everything perfectly. I'm just going to give props to Adam Driver's performance, because when he broke down, I mean, crying and laughing are the most difficult things to pull off, I think, to have
in
somebody...
acting, you mean?
Yeah, in acting. To sell.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I get you.
I've seen some very good actors not know how to laugh on screen. It gets embarrassing. No, seriously. But it's funny.
It's fucking embarrassing.
Because a lot of it's a fucking embarrassing. God damn.
Go on. Sorry, I don't mean to derail you. But you're right. Sometimes it can feel a little fake and forced.
Yeah, and which is why a lot of times you see directors gravitate towards comic actors, because they can do that. But when Adam Driver broke down and when he cried in this film, and really, there's always that part of you that holds back. You can never, it's always really hard to let your full emotions go when you're crying. He did such an amazing job when he would break down. It was just incredible.
I actually think Scarlett Johansson's tears, they're in her almost hidden tears. Because she breaks down in a different way, throughout this, and he has that one scene where he breaks down, slowly tearing throughout. It works really well.
There's a really they both have really great scenes, but there's a really great scene with Scarlett Johansson where she's like, "Well, I know you want to give me notes." It's like her last performance on his show.
Yeah, right. During their stage production.
She's like, "I know you want to give me notes." He's like, "Well, it made me feel better." So he gives her notes. He's like, I really don't think you can. He didn't cry.
Yeah.
You're like, you didn't cry, and she goes like, yeah, well, I can't cry on stage. Like it just doesn't feel natural to me. And then she immediately goes into the bedroom and like starts crying, like these really real feeling tears. Like as her, Scarlett Johansson as the actress goes from this scene where she's like, I can't cry on stage, to where she's like, crying like silently in bed, like all this frustration coming out, that I thought was like maybe the best scene in the movie. I really loved it.
It was a good scene. Yeah, you're right. Good. I'm glad you brought it up. And yeah, good example there.
That was one of those scenes I was referencing.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
One for me
so
for sure.
One's all around, I think.
Yep.
Alrighty, and it's back to Ian with the supporting characters.
Interesting. Well, there's a theater troupe, which I suppose, they're okay. They have some good actors and actresses in that.
If you don't mind, because I wanted to say something about them. If you noticed, it happened like maybe 3 or 4 times where like there's sort of like whisper gossiping about the relationship. Yeah. Like I thought that was maybe it's style, but it kind of served as a Greek chorus. Yeah. I thought was like their sort of role, but go on.
They can get back together another than that. I know it's like, it worked well. I would say that the mother of
Nicole's mom
and the sister did a fine job. I don't know. That's the thing, is that really this was dominated by the performances of Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, Ray Liotta, and Laura Dern. They really, to me, are the memorable aspects. And I guess if we kind of, I don't know, do you consider Alan Alda part of the antagonist group, or is he a supporting character?
I'd consider him more of a supporting character.
I would tend to agree as well.
I'd say for the he was the great chorus of the antagonists.
I like that. Like kind of
sure. So I'm
kind of works.
I'm kind of leaning towards a 0 for this, just because of the impact of the major performances in this, of both the heroes and the villains.
It is like there are good performances in the supporting cast, but none of them are like standout. Or I mean, you're right. It's Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson, Ray Liotta, Laura Dern are the main driving force of this, and I guess I should name their character names. So Nicole, Charlie, Nora, and
Jay,
Jay
I think.
are kind of the main driving forces of, and like not even Jay really. I almost look at him as a supporting character. Yeah, he's part of the antagonist, but I think Laura.
He's in it less than Laura Dern is.
Dern
Yeah.
is like really like he just comes and he's like he comes and goes. You know, like
he
shows up at
stakes.
He shows at the end
once he enters.
He shows up at the end to be Laura Dern's antagonist, basically.
Well, like it's almost like they're proxies, of course, for Charlie and Nicole versus each other.
Yeah, well, exactly. They're like the worst parts of the two protagonists, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what they represent in this. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Like there's the mother, the sister. Your mother, your sister,
their kid, I guess.
Their child, like Henry, their
okay.
kid. Wallace Shawn is in it, and he's fucking good.
He's got some good comedic relief, sure.
The evaluator comes in, and like she's good. Like everybody's good, but nobody like really does anything that makes this movie more interesting, other than the protagonists and the antagonists. I guess is what I'm kind of saying. So like, I don't have any problem with any of the supporting characters. They all are like parts. I feel like they're all like parts of the main characters, which are the protagonists mainly, and then the antagonists are also parts of the protagonists. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like the supporting characters are maybe like kind of the other side of the coin.
The Greek chorus was a very, I think, astute observation of that. But you never really consider the Greek chorus to be part of the real supporting cast.
Unto itself, yeah. It's a little difficult. So, you mind if I jump in for a second?
Like, if anything, I'll give Henry, their son, props. Like, he has the biggest role to play in terms of this. So, if I'm going to give it a 1, it'll be because of that. Her mother, probably second in terms of that. I think it's interesting that you don't meet his family because they were shitty, apparently. And, like, I like that take on it, too. It's like, he comes from a place of... He comes from, like, a broken home. She comes from...
a more lovely and stable home.
Like, kind of a broken home, but, like, not as... Like, a loving broken home, I guess we'll say. Like, I love the part where she's like, whenever I had problems with your dad, we went to... Cabo or
Malibu,
whatever the hell, Malibu, yeah,
whatever it was. Yeah.
It was like, didn't you catch him like blowing somebody in Malibu? She was like, yeah, but it was nice or whatever. But yeah, I found the supporting cast to be good and enjoyable, but I'm leaning on the side of a 0 for them just because I don't think that they add a super ton to the movie. They're not nearly as important as the rest of the protagonists and antagonists.
Yeah, so like it hinges upon like whether or not, again, if you put Ray Liotta and Laura Dern into this category because they are both the antagonistic force as personified in their lawyer characters, but of course they're like it depends whether you place them here or not. I think for me is the crux of it. And yeah, I agree, Steve-O. Otherwise, the rest of the supporting cast is good to solid. Not stand out, but certainly fills out the world of these two people's lives and, their friends and family and the stage troupe and all, like the theater group is there, like, sure. And yes, Nicole's family, especially her mother, I think is probably, from amongst the rest, is probably like the standout one to me or like the best one. All in all, I would say I would place him more of a secondary than the legalistic forces, but he's both too. He shares duties.
He has to. Well, the thing is, you can't share duties. You have to be one or the other. And here's the thing: is the two Ray Liotta and Laura Dern are the emblematic, but they wouldn't be effective if they didn't have Alan Alda there.
His dynamic. I don't disagree with that.
To show what a good devil, how ineffective one would be. So,
I mean, those are good points. So yeah, like I said, it sort of hinges. At this point, I was coming into it with a 1. But I may have been sort of convinced to walk it back, or at least think of it that way. And if I do, I do think that I would go to a 0. I guess I'll add it here, maybe just dialogue or something. But they did say, they again lampshaded within it. Someone says to Charlie, one of the lawyers, that divorce lawyers see good people at their worst.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a nice line. And
Yeah, criminal
coming
lawyers see
from
bad
him.
people at their
Yeah.
best. Divorce lawyers
Yeah.
see good people at their worst. Yeah,
but
that was a good line.
But having said all that, like if I divide it up that way, then yeah, I think I'll lean on a soft 0 here. But if we do agree to mostly put Laura and Ray in, already give them a 1 on the other front, then I would say it leans to the softer-ish 0 here, and I'll give it to you.
I'm going to put Alan on the back with the other lawyers because you're right about that. I am going to give the supporting cast a 1. Probably a softer one. I'm going to come on the other side.
I would say it's either a soft one or
Because,
soft 0
no,
kind of,
well,
yeah.
the thing is, I thought they did a good job of bringing you outside the world enough. I don't think they were as effective as they could have been. Like, in other words, having Wallace Shawn there was great, but he was also kind of a comic relief. Having the troupe have little things, comments on things, being the little Greek chorus, whatever, the gossip, that was one thing. The television crew with her. I mean, these are all little textures, but what really got me, the 2 performances, and Julie Haggerty's character, she's great, the mother, but the 2 things that really just pushed this just over were her sister at the beginning, where she was supposed to serve Adam Driver's character. And while that may have been kind of caricaturesque, it was a really good example of somebody being put in the middle of something they didn't have to, nor should they have been put into. So while it may have been a condensed version of it, I really felt
Sure. Enjoyed that scene
the
quite a bit.
subtext of what was going on. And the other thing was the observer when she came in, because she was a really good reflection on what you just said. It's all these little things in your life that, because we're human, doesn't make us a good person or a bad person. It's like when you fill out insurance papers, do you drink? How would you say never? Once a week? I mean, it's
Sometimes.
like there's no fill in the blank. Like, yes, I have a glass of wine on cigarette. No, they always put you into little slots. And this was a really great representation, because I just fill out insurance forms this week. So I know I'm filling out all this
Very relevant.
no, but it's the same kind of bullshit though.
Sure.
People are trying to qualify and quantify things that cannot be, and especially if you're taking a slice out of somebody's life. So on the strength of the subtleties in that one character of Nicole's sister, and of the observer, of what they represent, those 2 really stood out.
Pushes
to me.
it to a 1 for you.
It really did.
One last thing I want to say is that it's bothered me because I don't know children, but for some reason the actor who played their son looked a little bit older than
He was
his
supposed to.
age was. So it felt like he's
Little-
learning to read. I'm like, I just looking at you, I feel like you should.
Like, listen, motherfucker, you know how to read.
Yeah,
Well, I
you
think,
know
no, I think one of the
how to
points is
You've
he
been
was
reading the
struggling
script
to
for
read,
years.
but-
Well, no,
I get what you mean,
It looked
though.
like he
Sure.
was
In general.
perhaps 3 to 5 years older than the character he was portraying. Again, it's just I was distracted by that for a
Sure.
large.
I
That
got
just may be me. It seems to just be me. But
No, I certainly see it, but again, like, it wasn't affecting me as much. But I see what you mean, and I actually think he was okay, like, children-wise, like, especially given the
he's
story.
an older kid playing a young kid. Like,
Hey, that guy was 20 years old. You guys
Alright. Well, then he did a hell of a job, Jesus. But no, I think, like, I see your point, Chris. I think for me, though, I'm still going to lean on a soft 0 side, but it could have gone almost either way, so we'll split in the difference pretty much.
All right.
You're going 1?
I'm going 1. You all going 0s.
Yeah.
Okay. And that leaves Steve with dialogue.
Dialogue, great, terrific. I liked it a lot. It was good dialogue over there. I thought
Unlike that.
unlike this over here.
Yeah. Go on.
I thought that I thought it was a good script. There was like maybe 1 or 2 almost. You're right. Almost like eye-rolly things that happened in it. But for the most part, it was very solid, and like it won me over in the other parts, so that I did like I wasn't necessarily taken out of it by those parts, but I was like, like this is a little bit like produced or like
Hollywoodized.
yeah, exactly. But for the most part, I really liked it. Their fight was really well written.
That was a highlight scene for sure. Yeah.
I just thought like kind of the way they talked to each other was pretty good for the most part, and like that was a lot of it. Like the way they talked to each other, the way that the lawyers kind of sleazily won them or tried to win them over. Like Laura Dern, obviously better than Ray Liotta, but Ray Liotta was like, "You'll come crawl in bed." Like I feel like when he was like, "I can't afford this," in his head he was like, "You'll be back." That's like Ray Liotta's character in that. Like to the point where I see the things that he's thinking, like he portrayed that character. So I thought that was really well done in terms of the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue with the troop was really good. Just these little, like, as you guys mentioned earlier, like these little, like, aside, like you hear them kind of whispering, even though they're not really far from the
They're
main
like
characters.
stage whispering almost, which sort of makes sense.
Like, I feel like they're, like, talking about them in plain, like, they could hear them. And they're, like, I feel like that type of thing kind of happens sometimes where it's like, especially in an environment like that where it's like everybody's really close and like people just start talking about shit that they maybe shouldn't be in earshot of people that they shouldn't be talking about it, and you kind of whatever. I thought that the dialogue was good, and I'm gonna give it a 1.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add. I do agree that there were like maybe 3 or 4 moments that were like approaching cringe, like eye rollingness, but that it was few and far between, and it was definitely overshadowed by good, solid dialogue and believable. Again, went a long way along with the portrayals of selling me on these people's relationships and everything else that was being said, and especially the lawyer parts too were well done. So
this would make an excellent stage play.
Yeah,
and it's sort of like again the movie
and I
itself.
think the over dramatic points would work
better in such.
on the stage.
Yeah, I agree.
than they would.
But I'm giving it a 1 overall. So,
Do you have anything to say on anything to add dialogue?
But
That was what he
Oh,
just
that's
added.
what he just okay.
Do you have anything to add? Yes,
Just
I did.
No, because I'm going to bleed my dialogue into style.
Bleed
This- Okay, so I agree with you guys. I'm going to give
Let it
dialogue
bleed.
a 1.
Okay.
And that moves me into style.
Okay.
No.
I get you.
I
I'm just really
actually,
bleed.
I'm bleeding.
All right, good.
I don't have a little knife to cut myself in the
All
forearm.
right. All right.
I can poke myself with
that's
my
a
pen
good
here.
reference.
That's a good bleed into style.
The thing that I loved about, in a lot of ways, I like the style of this film, even if it's cliche, but I think they did a really good job at the beginning. It was very 1970s quintessential New York. I mean, it looks like something out of like a Louis Malle film from that time, where, ironically enough, Wallace Shawn you would find in those films.
Right. He'd been much younger at the time, but yeah.
He'd be much younger, and then they're in the West Coast. The way the contrast, the way the New York shots were versus the way the West Coast
A
were.
lot of space in LA.
Yeah.
Which actually is a good
LA.
dialogue.
It's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Do you go for a hike in L.A.?
Yeah, it is.
You can walk in LA.
You can walk in L.A.
No, you can't.
But I think no, you can't. But I think the dialogue went along with the way they juxtaposed the East Coast, the West Coast, and I think a lot of the times the dialogue where you had the theater troupe. One of you said before with the dialogue, you had the theater whispering where you're not. It has to be loud enough for the audience to hear it, but believable
Stage
enough
whispers,
that the stage whispers. But in LA, because she was going on a TV show, it was much more. So in New York,
Hollywoodized again, LA-ified, if you will.
LA, but the New York was shot very much like a stage show, to the point where he was actually, I was reading this that everybody's a fan of the Sondheim's show Company, so they both did on the East Coast and West Coast. That was a song, apparently one of the songs he was singing, or the song Adam Driver was singing in New York, versus in LA where things are a little more colorful. In New York seemed to be a little more
kind of drabbish.
Colors washed out.
Yeah,
Not essentially drabbish, but one was a little more saturated, one was a little more washed out.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And I think he did I think it was important to the film insofar as it was never a question of location, because there were flip-flopping between coasts. So I think the dialogue, I think the Randy Newman's score I have to give credits to, because I didn't realize it was him. Usually I can pick. I usually can pick a
Might
Randy
as well
Newman
have been Toy
score
Story.
out of a thing, but most of the time it really wasn't.
A divorce story.
A divorce story. I have to give him props because I didn't realize it was him until the end.
Some kind of story is going on.
But I think stylistically the film worked really well because there's a lot of information and a lot of quick cuts they were feeding you, and I think that he did a really good job of finding ways in dialogue and visually to delineate exactly where you were.
So two things I want to say. You mentioned juxtapositioning, and I actually think that the way they paced this film and the way he crafted it to juxtaposition scenes, sometimes the juxtapositions between the scenes were more important than the scenes themselves. Showing the or even do like callback references, to previous scenes, but switch them or reverse them in the ways. There's actually this one great part where in the opening, Nicole is talking about how Charlie's so decisive and that she's always and when they're in the divorce of things, he can't decide on the menu, so she decides for him. And that juxtaposition between how they've developed overall,
this nice little moment
worked really well. And I have to say that Invisible Man costume is one of the best Halloween costumes I've ever seen.
I immediately thought of you.
Thank you.
I'm furious that we didn't get to see Henry in the
Frankenstein custom tailor-made Frankenstein.
Little bastard.
Furious.
But I mean, like, I would say like the style is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't like, to me, like one of the most highlight parts of this film. Yeah, it was good. It was fine. Yeah, there's some nice juxtapositions, like you said. Like that was probably like the best, most well done, executed element to it. I really don't remember the score at all. I had no idea it was him, and it's not bad. I was forgettable. Like I don't remember like a lot of the music. So
the less Randy Newman, the better.
Yeah,
like, that's so strange. Like I kind of disagree with you on that.
I mean, maybe just me. I literally don't remember hearing music. In fact,
one of the first
I just saw this film.
One of the first things I noticed was like whatever filter Baumbach used to fucking film this is like it has this like weird like you said like 70s 80s esque feel to it, and like it's like a little bit grainy.
Yeah.
And it just like put me in a weird like what is this trying like what I almost immediately was like, what is this filter trying to tell me about this movie? And like what is the way that they're shooting it trying to tell me? And like I kind of didn't stop thinking about that the whole time.
That's interesting.
And there is like that really great Invisible Man costume that like says a lot about what he's feeling at the time and like what he's thinking. Like, you know, that's obviously part of
a little bit on the fake nose.
Yeah, it's no accident. Yeah, yes, a little bit.
Yeah, but like it didn't feel like it was that like obvious. It was until after I like watched the movie and thought about it that I really thought about that connection. It wasn't like I was like, oh, this is obviously what they're trying to say.
I think I blurted out, he is the Invisible Man. Like,
yeah, I mean, to me,
he's Mr. Cellophane. But like, I don't know. And I did enjoy the soundtrack. It wasn't overwrought or anything. And that's probably, you know, part of the reason that you don't remember it, because it was like blaring out there.
I'm sure it was fine, but so fine that it didn't.
Randy Newman being subtle.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, listen, Randy Newman gets a lot of shit, but he's actually a pretty good fucking songwriter.
So, I'm not saying he's not. I just think I didn't really remember the score of this particular film. Go on.
And I really did enjoy the just the like subtle shots that they got in terms of this. I thought the cinematography was like understated, but like in a really good way. Yeah, I like the style of this quite a bit. I'm going to give it a pretty strong one.
One for me overall, but maybe you guys liked it more than, or thought it was better, but still good. That's my final thought on style.
Yeah, there's one thing. I was really surprised because the music I was really interested in, because one of my favorite bands is Luna, and Noah Baumbach had Britta and Dean from Luna do the soundtrack, and Dean Warrenham actually played the cinematographer on the West Coast. And so I was really paying attention, like, are Britta and Dean doing this? Which I found out later they contributed a song in it. So in other words, I was focusing, I was trying to listen to the music, and I was like, I wonder who did the music. So when I saw Randy Newman, I'm like, fuck Randy Newman. I bet, like, what I'm saying is, it just didn't remind me, and I
So
met
you're
that.
angry about Randy Newman.
No, it was actually
going on Randy rants all the time.
it was actually a sarcastic compliment, because I did not recognize this as Randy Newman, and usually he is very good. I'm not going to take credit away from him, but he does have a style, a sound about him. So the fact that I didn't recognize this as a Randy Newman score definitely works.
Just go listen to Political Science. Tell me you don't like Randy Newman. It's a great fucking song.
But the Family Guy joke from like 20 years ago is on key to describing things around him. Like,
yeah,
Sure.
Sometimes when he's doing Toy Story, for sure.
and again, I'm not taking anything away from Randy Newman. I just want to let you know that it's subverted.
All
I
right.
was surprised.
All right.
And Scott, would you recommend this movie?
Sure. I probably would recommend it more than I wouldn't. Now, again, like as you said, Steve-O, it might not be my personal cup of tea, like generally outside of this, but since it is getting a lot of buzz, and now having seen it, I would say, yeah, it's worth it. It's like just over 2 hours. It's really nicely paced. And if you haven't seen like better divorce movies, like as we happen to have, you'll probably enjoy it quite a bit. It still stands on its own as is. And I think, yeah, it's a well done film with some really great performances that are being recognized, rightly so. So yeah, I give it a pretty damn solid recommendation.
this is my cup of tea because I really enjoy the death of love and the schadenfreude I feel from that. And this isn't my first recommendation for a good divorce drama film. I thought it was good though, and maybe decent, maybe above decent. But I would recommend this overall because I thought this was, especially for people who like the more Hollywoodized versions of these things. It was a fine movie.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it was pretty good. It's there are many worse ways to spend 2 hours and 18 minutes or however long it was. And
The Irishman.
well, that's
Plus
far
another hour.
longer.
Sure.
But
I'll say
And
it.
nobody even gets divorced in that film. What a letdown.
but
anyways.
yeah, we're throwing shade at the Irishman weeks after we
Yeah, yeah.
reviewed it. But yeah, this is a good flick. Good performances. Just an enjoyable. Well, maybe not enjoyable movie, but like a good,
A
well-done
well-composed movie. yes.
And by the end, you're not feeling too bad about it. Most people,
it ends on a somewhat
I would say.
optimistic note, sure.
So I mean, I'm gonna give it a 1. It's worth a watch, and it may be a Best Picture film, and I'm not gonna be super pissed about it.
It's fine if it is, sure. Yeah. Basically how I feel.
This film ruined my day. It's a very it's a very, very good film. I'm not taking anything away from it. Obviously, as we've shown, it did hit a couple of wounds, but I'm not recommending it because I do not see. I think back in the films we've done. I mean, even A Separation. I wasn't really sure if I was going to recommend A Separation because it is a difficult watch, and just because something's a difficult watch doesn't mean I'm not going to recommend it. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to ask me for something like this, I will recommend, unsolicited, I would recommend A Separation.
Do you think Squid and the Whale is better than Marriage Story as well? Just quickly.
Yes.
Okay, so you recommend that over this?
Over that,
as well.
over this.
We're
But,
going to review that soon on your recommendation.
okay.
All right.
We'll review that. So I guess
we have to review all divorce movies.
Okay.
That'll be our theme coming up in the next year, so keep an eye
so
on that.
when we review that, I'll be drinking during it, and then of course, obviously that's getting a 1 already because I recommend.
All right.
But no, I just this is not it's a very good movie. I'm not taking away from anything, but it is not a movie I would go to somebody and say, "Oh my God, you have to see this film." It was a really uncomfortable watch.
Okay.
I kept pausing it, getting up. I was playing guitar, just because I was noodling around because I was very, very uncomfortable during it. And which speaks to the effectiveness of it. I want you to know that this is not a hating, not recommend. This is I can't recommend this because
It made you feel super
Because of
uncomfortable.
personal-
because
stuff.
personally,
Sure.
I would definitely say A Separation for a multitude of reasons. I think it's a little more complex. I think it's a little more subtle. I think that works to it a little better, and there's a lot of cultural significance to it. This very good, but
No
I
culture.
cannot write. No, there's cultural aspects of it, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more. I mean, there's a lot more nuance, I think, happening and I think by virtue of the fact that it does not take place in the entertainment industry, which this does.
Yeah, sure.
And I understand this is semi-autobiographical with Noah Baumbach's divorce with Jennifer Jason Leigh and all that stuff, but there is it was a very effective film, but it's not something I'm going to tell people they have to go see.
Totally fair.
I think Separation and this make a good double feature.
You want to
You
feel
want
really
to just be
horrible.
really-
Yeah.
Can't really,
really
drink our way through that
depressed.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was pretty joyous after it.
What
anyway.
was that?
I was pretty joyous after the film. Yeah.
Because of
What, this one or a Separation?
Just really amped. Had so much energy after that.
He was like, I'm ready for get a divorce right now. Let's do this.
I really
Go
want to
find
get
a
married so
lawyer.
I can get a divorce.
Yeah.
What's the statute before we can get divorced when it's no longer an annulment's off the table?
He was raring to go. But so what does that leave us, Chris?
Okay, well, that leaves us all. We all agreed that plot was a solid 2. I like supporting characters. I gave that a 1. The 3 of you gave that 0s. Conversely, recommendation, I did not recommend it. The 3 of you did, which leaves us with an aggregate score of 8,
Okay. I think that's
which
pretty
I
spot
think
on.
is fair.
Yes.
Perfectly fine. A very strong, solid 8 for this movie.
I
Yeah.
kind of suspect that you gave it a 0 for recommendation just so you didn't have to do math.
So I did-
He's backdooring himself.
Actually, that's it. I'm like, oh, fuck. God damn
Shit,
it.
I'm gonna have to figure out decimals.
Where's my calculator? No. No, I knew right away that I wasn't going to
I
recommend this
got you.
film.
Fair enough.
It was just a matter of whether I was going to give the rest of it an 8 or, not. So,
Well,
anyway, if anybody has anything to add, and thank you for listening to. This is my therapy session. Also,
you owe us money now.
you all, yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
I have been Chris
I
Morgan
charge
here with
900.
Scott Thurlow,
And I will be getting divorced next time.
Ian Manzer.
The British election was yesterday, and I'm very sad with the finalization of the divorce of Britain and the EU.
Yes.
And Stephen Hermosi.
And Chris, you owe me $900 an hour. So we're coming up on 1 hour right now. That'll be $900.
All right. And with that,
Checks in the mail.
good night. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?